The last heir. They found the last man who lied to him floating in the Vanzetti River with his shoes still on. In this city, everyone knew what that meant. But nobody expected what was floating inside the walls of Marco Rixai's own mansion. Marco Rixai didn't walk into rooms. He arrived in them. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed always in a charcoal suit that cost more than most men's cars, he carried silence with him the way other men carried cologne. His eyes were the color of old steel, not gray, not blue, something colder than both. When he looked at you, you felt it in your spine before you registered it in your brain. He had built his empire on 3 things: patience, precision, and the absolute certainty that every person around him had a price. He was never wrong. Until the morning, his head of house, old Bernardo, knocked on his study door with trembling hands and delivered news that cracked the foundation of everything. "Sir," Bernardo's voice barely existed, "Elena is pregnant, and Carla and Rosa." The room went so quiet you could hear the city breathing outside the window. Marco set down his espresso. He didn't shout. He didn't stand. He simply looked at Bernardo with those steel eyes and said very softly, "All 3. Not a question, a calculation already beginning. The city thought it was scandal. By nightfall, whispers moved through the underworld like smoke. Rixai lost control of his own house. Men who feared him allowed themselves small, private smiles. A king undone by his own appetites. How deliciously human. But Marco Rixai had no appetites. That was what nobody understood. He called all 3 women into the grand dining room. Elena, 26, beautiful, ambitious, always watching him with eyes that wanted something. Carla, 30, quiet, efficient, the kind of woman who memorized your schedule before you asked. And Rosa, 22, small, plain, the one who refilled his water glass without ever meeting his gaze. He studied them, the way a surgeon studies a body before cutting. "Sit down," he said. They sat. "I know what this looks like," he said, moving slowly around the long mahogany table. "And I need each of you to understand, I know everything that happens in this house. Everything. So lying to me right now would be the last interesting decision you ever make." Elena lifted her chin. Carla folded her hands. Rosa stared at the table. "Someone," Marco said, "made a decision about my legacy without my permission, and I want to know who gave the order." The silence that followed was the kind that changes rooms permanently. It was Elena who broke first, not with fear, with pride. She stood up slowly, smoothing her dress, and looked at him with something that resembled admiration. "It was me," she said. "I came to them 6 months ago. I told them what I knew." Marco's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "What you knew?" "That you're dying." The word landed like a stone through glass. "Stage 3, your doctor, Dr. Finelli, he's my uncle. He told me 14 months ago. You've been hiding it from everyone. No heir, no successor, and every family circling this territory like wolves." She stepped closer, fearless. "We weren't seduced, Marco. We were strategic. One of us carries your bloodline forward legitimately, legally, undeniably. Whoever carries your child inherits everything. No war, no vacuum, continuity." She smiled, and it was the most dangerous smile in the room. "We did what you would have done." Marco stood absolutely still for a long moment. Then, something almost imperceptible moved across his face. Not anger, something more frightening. Respect. He had them each tested quietly over the following weeks. DNA, discreetly obtained. He told no one the results, not even Bernardo. He sat alone each night in his study with a glass of whiskey he rarely finished, looking out at the city he had bled for, wondering for the first time in his life what he was actually leaving behind. Elena called every day with updates, managing the situation like a portfolio. Carla submitted weekly written reports on her health, precise and professional. Rosa said nothing. She asked for nothing. She simply continued working quietly, carefully, and once, when he passed her in the hallway and their eyes finally met, she looked away so fast it almost looked like shame. It made him stop. "Rosa." She turned slowly. "Were you afraid?" he asked. She thought about it, genuinely thought. which almost no one did when he spoke to them. "Yes," she said, "but not of you." "Then of what?" "Of hopping for something I had no right to hope for." He didn't ask her anything else, but that night he didn't drink the whiskey at all. The results came back on a Thursday. Marco read the paper alone, standing at his desk, morning light cutting sharp angles across the room. His face gave nothing, but his hand, just briefly, pressed flat against the mahogany surface like he needed the earth to be solid beneath him. Elena, not his. Carla, not his. Rosa. Rosa. The woman who never asked. The woman who called it hopping for something she had no right to. The woman who looked away in the hallway not out of guilt, but out of something that had no place in this world, genuine feeling. He found her in the garden that afternoon, sitting on the stone bench near the roses she tended every morning before anyone else was awake. Her small hands were folded in her lap. She wasn't performing anything. She was simply there, the way she always was, present without demand. He sat beside her, a Mafia boss in a charcoal suit, sitting on a garden bench, and the city would never believe it. "It's yours," he said. She closed her eyes, one breath, too. "I know," she whispered. "You knew." "I hoped I was wrong." She finally looked at him, and her eyes were full of something bright and terrified. "Because if it's yours, then everything gets complicated. And I only wanted—" She stopped herself. "What?" he said. "Say it." "I only wanted to give you something that lasted." Her voice broke on the last word, just slightly. "Not for the money, not for the name. You work so hard to leave something behind, and everyone around you wants a piece of it, and I just thought someone should give you something without wanting anything back." Marco Rixai, feared by generals, by judges, by men with armies, sat quietly in a garden with a woman who had just handed him the most disorienting thing he had ever received. Kindness without strategy. He looked at her for a long time, and then, very slowly, he reached over and covered her hands with his. "Then let me," he said quietly, "learn how to do the same." He lived 14 more months. In that time, he restructured everything, legally, cleanly, with a precision that surprised even his attorneys. Elena received a settlement and a warning. Carla received a reference letter and a firm goodbye. The empire was dismantled quietly, sold off and converted, piece by piece, into something legitimate. And Rosa, quiet, plain, overlooked Rosa, was given his name, his home, and a daughter born in early spring with steel-gray eyes and her mother's instinct for stillness. He held the baby once, on a Tuesday afternoon, in the garden near the roses. He didn't say anything grand. He wasn't built for grand. He just looked at her, this small, impossible thing. And for the first time in 30 years, Marco Rixai felt no need to control what happened next. He had finally left something behind that couldn't be bought, stolen, or taken by force. And it had come from the one person who never asked him for a thing.